So usually when we talk about a business project, there's this expectation of precision, like engineering, right?
Right, yeah. Like it's all math.
Exactly. You
Mhm.
have a budget, you have a deadline, maybe a software update, and the project manager just points at the goal and says, there it is, go build it.
If only it were that simple.
I know, right? Because then you step into the actual process of figuring out what exactly you're supposed to be building, and suddenly all that precision just completely evaporates.
It really does. It gets messy fast.
It does. You're suddenly looking at this landscape of human desires, vague requests, hidden agendas, office politics, and it is honestly completely murky.
Murky is a great word for it.
So, demystifying those murky waters of business analysis, or BA, that is our mission for today's deep dive. We are pulling from a massive stack of sources today for you. We've got expert talks, real-world case studies from a Canadian bank and a U.S. university.
Plus some incredibly detailed framework guides from the Project Management Institute.
Right, the PMI stuff. And we are going to use all of this to prove a pretty surprising point to you. Business analysis isn't just, a corporate job title for someone walking around in a suit.
No, not at all.
It is a highly learnable mindset. It's this universal toolkit that you can use to solve the right problems in your own projects.
Yeah, and to set the foundation here, there's a really great insight from one of our sources, a speaker named Louis Charles Gauthier.
Oh, yeah, I like his take.
Yeah, he points out that in today's agile, really fast-moving world, you don't actually need to know absolutely everything about coding or finance to do business analysis.
Right.
In fact, he argues that the modern BA is often functioning more like a coach.
A coach, right.
Yeah, their job is to ensure that the team is following best practices. In a modern approach, business analysis simply must get done, regardless of who specifically holds the title.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because when I was looking through these sources, the best analogy that came to my mind for a business analyst it's not a spreadsheet cruncher. It's more like being a project's universal translator. Or honestly, like a therapist.
A therapist. That's incredibly accurate.
Right. Because you are the bridge between a stakeholder's abstract, messy, emotional idea and a technical team's concrete execution. Which means whether you are trying to roll out a massive new software system at your office, or, you're just trying to organize a highly complex community event for your neighborhood, you are doing business analysis.
You're doing the work.
Exactly. You are trying to bridge that gap between an idea and a tangible solution.
And that gap is where the real work happens. Because to build that bridge, a business analyst has to basically cycle through four core roles.
Okay, what are the four?
First, they are the requirement elicitor. So that means conducting the workshops, the interviews, actively pulling the necessary information out of people's heads.
Because people rarely just hand you the answers.
Never. Second, they are the problem solver. They ensure those individual tiny challenges actually align with the broader business goals.
Makes sense.
Third, they are the translator, just like you mentioned earlier, turning tech speak into plain English and vice versa.
The most important one, maybe.
It's huge.
Mm.
And finally, they are the change facilitator. So helping the human beings actually adapt to the new system once it is built.
But uncovering the real why behind an idea is incredibly difficult. Because reading through these sources, it becomes wildly apparent that we have to look way, way past what people simply say they want.
Oh, absolutely. And that brings us to a perfect case study from our sources. It features Cheryl Lee, a project lead at a large Canadian banking institution.
Right, the plug-and-play story.
Yes. So the executives at this bank, they decided they wanted a more seamless account creation experience for their customers. So they bought a vendor solution, just a piece of third-party software, and told the team to integrate it into the bank's system. They assumed it was just plug and play.
Like they just wanted to turn it on and walk away.
Precisely. Just flip a switch. But Cheryl, operating in that elicitor and problem solver role, she knew she couldn't just take that at face value. She started asking a ton of questions to gather requirements, and the stakeholders actually grew annoyed.
I can imagine. Executives love when you slow them down.
Oh, yeah. They were caught off guard. They essentially said, why do we need to be involved? Just plug it in. So Cheryl changed tactics. She drafted these detailed use case scenarios and did a show and tell.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, she walked them through the reality, asking, what happens if a customer opens an account in the physical branch versus doing it over the phone?
So she made it real for them.
Exactly. Suddenly, the visual mapping made the stakeholders realize how complex the integration really was.
But the real twist here was about the call center, right? Because I remember the executives explicitly demanded that this new system perfectly mimic their current call center process.
Yes.
They wanted a literal carbon copy of the old way, just running on the new software.
Yeah, they did. But Cheryl kept pressing for the rationale. Why did it need to be a carbon copy? And by relentlessly digging into the why, she finally discovered the truth.
Which was?
They didn't actually want to replicate the current process at all. What they truly wanted was a system so user-friendly that they wouldn't have to spend any money or time training their call center agents on a new interface.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was the underlying need zero training time. If Cheryl had just taken their initial demand for a carbon copy at face value, she would have forced the technical team to build the wrong thing entirely.
But wait, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Okay, sure.
Isn't it incredibly risky to push back and relentlessly question the very stakeholders who are funding the project? I mean, these are the executives holding the checkbook, telling them no or constantly asking, are you sure? That feels like a fast track to career suicide.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the alternative is actually much more damaging to your career.
Really?
Yeah, there's a brilliant story in our sources from an IT leader named Banu Viswanatha.
Oh, right. The retail reporting track.
Exactly. He was leading a transformation program for a retail organization. The previous business analyst on the project had taken exactly the safe approach you just described.
The yes man approach.
Right. They just sat in meetings, took notes, and acted as an order taker.
So whatever the executives asked for, they just smiled and added it to the master list.
Yes, and because of that lack of pushback, the project scope completely ballooned. The stakeholders kept dreaming up these highly custom reports, and the analysts just said, okay. They ended up with this staggering list of 180 custom reports to develop.
180, that is...
So possibly expensive. It was a massive scope. So Banu steps in, looks at this bloated list, and finally asks the room, why? He pulls the technical lead and the analyst together and asks if they had even looked at the out-of-the-box reports the software already provided.
Let me guess. They hadn't even checked.
They hadn't. Not even once. Banu forced the issue, communicated the reality of the existing features to the stakeholders, and that list of 180 custom reports dropped down to 7.
Wait, really? From 180 down to 7?
Down to 7. It shows that a business analyst must have the courage to ask why. If you just act like the person at the fast food counter taking orders, you are pretty much guaranteeing a failing project.
Okay, fair point. But uncovering the real why is completely useless if you can't get the actual humans paying for the project to agree with it.
Oh, definitely.
The math doesn't matter if the psychology fails. Which brings us to managing the stakeholders. I was thinking about this, and the initial stakeholder meeting really feels like a first date.
A first date? How so?
Well, if you sit down at a coffee shop on a first date, you don't immediately pull out a binder and start discussing the logistics of a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage.
Well, I hope not.
Right. You first need to find out if you even share the same vision of a successful future.
That intuition is heavily supported by our experts, actually. Dave Davis, he's a senior project manager in our sources. He advises that in your very first meeting with stakeholders, you shouldn't discuss the project much at all.
Really? Not at all.
Not the specifics, no. Instead, you ask them to define what success looks like to them personally. How do they view their own role? And crucially, how do they prefer to communicate?
Oh, that makes sense. Like email versus phone calls.
Exactly. Do they want a formal 20-page progress report every Friday, or just a quick text message on Tuesday mornings? You are building a personal relationship and establishing a dialogue, so that later, when a deadline is inevitably missed, you already have a foundation of trust to fall back on.
Okay, that makes perfect sense for a willing participant. But what happens when the stakeholders are actively working against you?
That is the tricky part.
Because there's a point made by Cindy Shelton in our sources that the term stakeholder is actually misleading. People often don't even realize they have a stake in the project. They get distracted by their regular day job.
It happens all the time.
She shared a case study from her time at the Department of Homeland Security where a director kept missing critical project deadlines. She was the bottleneck for the entire initiative.
And Cindy's solution to that bottleneck is, honestly, a masterclass in behavioral psychology.
Oh, completely.
She used public pressure. Cindy started briefing the steering committee weekly using visual indicators, literally a graphic schedule showing who owed work and when.
So everyone could see it.
Yes, it made the slip tasks totally transparent to the whole group. By the second week of this public briefing, the director miraculously stopped missing deadlines and started delivering on time.
I want to dig into the why of that because it's so fascinating. Why does a visual board make an executive suddenly do their homework? It's entirely about social currency and loss aversion, isn't it?
Absolutely.
If there's a giant red dot next to your name every single Tuesday, your peer group sees you failing. The risk to their reputation outweighs the effort of just getting the task done.
It's powerful. This raises an important question, though. How do you handle stakeholders when the power dynamics are unequal?
Right.
Because you can't always put a powerful director on blast in front of a committee. If you have 5 stakeholders in a room, and one of them is the CEO, while the others are middle managers, the CEO is naturally going to steamroll the conversation.
So how do you handle the CVO?
The strategy our experts suggest here is operating with radical transparency. The analyst should lay out all the possible options up front, attaching specific data-backed risks and benefits to each one. You even note a formal recommendation before opening the floor for discussion.
So you frame the debate before the loudest voice even has a chance to dominate it.
Exactly.
It forces the conversation to be about the data rather than just yielding to whoever has the biggest title.
Yeah.
Okay, so the psychology is managed, the loudest voice isn't dominating, but now they hand you a massive wish list.
They always do.
How do you mathematically organize human desires without losing your mind? Because you obviously can't build everything.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
And this is where we bring order to the chaos using specific frameworks. For gathering and prioritizing demands, one of the most effective tools is the Moscow method.
Moscow.
Yeah, it forces ruthless prioritization. It stands for must have, should have, could have, and won't have.
Okay, let's break that down.
Must have means the feature is not negotiable. Without it, the solution isn't viable. Should have means it's essential, but we can create a temporary workaround if needed. Could have are the optional nice-to-haves, and won't have are the demands explicitly cut because they are out of scope or budget.
I love that framework. For you listening right now, think about the last time you planned a family vacation.
That's a great way to look at it.
If you did explicitly separate what your family must have, like, a working bathroom, from what you could have, like a balcony with an ocean view, you probably ended up way over budget and stressed out. It's the exact same principle.
And failing to prioritize requirements correctly has disastrous consequences. We have a really compelling case study here from Lydia Liberio regarding a U.S. university.
Oh, this one was painful to read.
It was. The institution suffered from deeply flawed requirements gathering when designing new degree concentrations. They didn't include all the key stakeholders, and the elicitation process dragged on for years.
Years.
Years. Because they lacked a clear Moscow-style prioritization, the new degree programs they eventually launched actually cannibalized their existing classes.
So they basically competed with themselves.
Yeah, they shrank viable class sizes and created massive credential gaps for the faculty.
They built something that actively harmed their own ecosystem, so how did they fix it?
Well, they expanded the stakeholder pool to include non-traditional voices, like the admission staff who are actually talking to prospective students. Then they utilized 2 powerful analytical frameworks, SWOT and Kano analysis.
Okay, we need to break those down. Let's start with SWOT. What exactly does that stand for, and how does it work?
Sure. SWOT stands for Strengths, Weaknesses, Opportunities, and Threats. It's a strategic planning tool. The university used it to look internally at their own strengths and weaknesses, like faculty expertise or maybe outdated technology.
Stuff they could control.
Exactly. Then they looked externally at opportunities and threats in the market, like a booming tech sector nearby, or a rival university launching a similar program. This helped them align the new degrees with actual job market needs rather than just, academic theory.
And what about the Kano analysis? How did that factor in?
The Kano model is a fascinating way to categorize customer preferences to see what actually drives satisfaction. It divides features into 3 categories. First are basic features.
Okay.
These are things the customer just assumes will be there. If you buy a car, you assume it has brakes. Right?
Yeah, you aren't excited about them, but you'd be furious if they were missing.
Exactly. Second are performance features, where more is always better, like gas mileage.
Okay, that tracks.
Third are excitement features. These are unexpected delights that the customer didn't even know to ask for, like heated cup holders. By applying Kano, the university could figure out which parts of the new degree programs were just basic expectations and which would genuinely excite prospective students.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Let's say we have used SWOT and Kano, and we have our perfect Moscow wish list. How do we mathematically prove to the stakeholders that we actually built what they asked for at the very end of the project?
This is where we move from abstract ideas into testable reality. We use the INVEST technique to write our acceptance criteria.
INVEST, another acronym.
Always another acronym. It stands for Independent, Negotiable, Valuable, Estimable, Small, and Testable. Every requirement must hit those marks. To ensure they do, business analysts write what are called user stories. The formula is strictly defined. As an actor, I want to function so that I can business reason.
Okay, the examples in the source material were a little dry, mostly about logging into enterprise software.
Yeah, they can be a bit rigid.
Let's use a more relatable everyday example. Let's talk about ordering coffee on an app.
That works perfectly. A user story for a coffee app might be, as a tired parent on the way to daycare, I want to order and pay for my coffee ahead of time so that I don't have to wait in a long line with a screaming toddler.
I feel that one in my soul.
Right. It clearly defines the actor, the function, and the very human business reason behind it.
But that's just the story. How do we actually test the tired parent's coffee app?
That requires the validation test formula, which is given precondition when action, then post-condition.
Okay.
So applying that to our coffee app. Given that I have a valid credit card saved in my profile, when I select a latte and hit order ahead, then my card should be charged and a ticket sent to the barista's queue.
It takes all the emotion out of it. It turns a vague, highly emotional desire like make my morning less stressful into a pass-fail math equation that a software developer can actually code.
That transformation is the absolute core of the job. Once you have hundreds of these formulas, you compile them into what is essentially the ultimate receipt for the project. The Requirements Traceability Matrix, or RTM.
The RTM.
Right. It is a comprehensive document that tracks every single requirement. It assigns a unique ID, explains the rationale, lists the owner, and shows its current testing status.
Why is that traceability so vital to the process, though? Why so much paperwork?
Because it allows the team to trace any feature forward to its specific test case, or crucially backward to its original business justification.
So you don't build random stuff.
Exactly. If a developer is building a specific button on the coffee app and wonders, why are we even doing this? The RTM points right back to the specific stakeholder need. It prevents scope creep by ensuring every line of code has a documented business purpose.
So we have our requirements locked in, we have our priorities, our INES formulas, and our RTM receipt. But reading through the sources, it becomes incredibly clear that how we track and build all this completely changes depending on the project's ecosystem.
Oh, completely.
The tools stay the same, but the rhythm of the work completely shifts. The best analogy I could think of for this ecosystem shift is the difference between building a skyscraper and cooking a soup.
I like where this is going. Walk us through that.
Well, if you're building a skyscraper, you absolutely must have the blueprints finished, approved, and baselined before you pour a single ounce of concrete. You cannot get to the 50th floor and suddenly decide you want the elevator shaft on the outside of the building.
Definitely not.
That is the waterfall, or predictive approach. But the agile or adaptive approach is like cooking a complex soup. You don't have a rigid blueprint. You start with a base broth, but you are constantly tasting it, adding spices, asking your guests what they think, and adjusting the recipe in real time.
That captures the dynamic perfectly. Two of our experts, Salah Haswa and Jack Shia, they contrast these exact environments. In a waterfall skyscraper environment, the business analyst creates that massive, comprehensive RTM upfront.
Because you need the blueprint.
Right. Once it's locked in, any change requires a heavy, formal change management process. You need impact analysis, cost projections, and official executive signatures just to tweak a minor feature.
Because moving an elevator shaft is incredibly expensive once the concrete is dry.
Exactly the point. But in an agile soup cooking environment, the BA doesn't use a massive upfront RTM. They maintain a flexible product backlog, which is a constantly shifting list sorted by priority. They validate those requirements iteratively, sprint by sprint.
So it's much faster.
Much faster. If a stakeholder wants a change, the team simply accommodates it in the next 2-week sprint with minimal documentation updates. No massive executive change board required. What's fascinating here is how the business analyst's own psychological working style must fundamentally shift based on this approach.
Really? How does it impact them psychologically?
Well, Waterfall provides a highly rigid, comforting structure. You're tracing against firm baselines. It appeals to people who love checklists and absolute certainty. But Agile requires continuous daily collaboration. A single person often has the authority to approve requirements in a quick 15-minute daily stand-up meeting.
Oh,
It requires a tremendous amount of mental resilience because you have to be comfortable letting your requirements constantly evolve. You have to let go of the illusion of total control.
you have to be okay with the messy human side of the soup.
Well said.
So what does this all mean? If we step back and look at everything we've unpacked today, business analysis clearly isn't just about filling out spreadsheets or taking notes in a meeting.
It is so much more dynamic than that.
It is the art of acting as that universal translator. It's doing the detective work to find the real problem, like Cheryl did at the bank with the zero training requirement. It's managing human psychology, utilizing public accountability boards, and framing debates to handle unequal power dynamics.
Exactly.
It's rigorously defining abstract desires into pass-fail math using NVINVEST formulas. And it's adapting your entire mental strategy to whether your team is building a skyscraper or making soup.
To add the final layer to that summary, the ultimate goal of every single framework and conversation we've discussed today is determining one thing: business value.
Business value.
Yes. Vahed Azad-Manesh, he's one of our portfolio management experts, he breaks this down beautifully. He says business analysis is ultimately answering three fundamental questions about any idea.
Okay.
First, is it desirable? Does it offer a logical balance between cost, benefit, and risk? Second, is it viable? Can we actually deliver the product technically? And third, is it achievable? Will the product genuinely provide the benefits we think it will once it's in the real world?
Desirable, viable, achievable. If the answer to any of those is no, the project simply shouldn't happen.
Period.
Which brings me to a tiny but absolutely fascinating detail I found buried in the sources. We spent all this time talking about how to gather requirements to successfully build a project. But the sources note that sometimes projects proceed on momentum alone, even when they have poor alignment with corporate strategy.
Oh, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
People get emotionally attached.
Right, sunk cost fallacy kicks in. And the sources point out that a massive part of business analysis is realizing when a project's business case can no longer be justified and having the courage to terminate it.
Knowing when to pull the plug is arguably the ultimate test of a business analyst's integrity.
So I want to leave you, our listener, with a direct challenge based on that. Look at the projects in your own life right now. And I don't just mean at the office. I mean at home, in your community, your personal goals.
Think about the underlying why.
Exactly. Are you pushing forward with something just because you already started? Or does the underlying why actually still justify the effort, the stress, and the cost? Because maybe, just maybe, the most valuable piece of business analysis you could do today isn't figuring out how to build something new. It's deciding what not to do.
A difficult but incredibly necessary truth to uncover.
Sometimes the best thing a universal translator can tell the team is that the message says to pack up and go home. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into business analysis. Keep asking why, keep digging past the surface, and stay curious. We'll see you next time.